Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the First Peoples Info Session Brief for Fellows for the Churchill Fellowship. First and foremost, for those who don't know me, my name is Leila Gurruwiwi, but most people know me as Leila Gurruwiwi, and as a proud Yolngu woman of the Gulpur clan, originally from North East Arnhem land, I am lucky and privileged enough to live and thrive on the lands of the Wurundjeri and Bunurong people down here in Naarm on Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to their elders past and present. And I would like to extend that respect to all First Nations people who are on tonight, as well as acknowledging the respective countries that you're all coming to us here tonight as well, and also acknowledge your elders and the stories that you bring from your communities as well. And it's so lovely to be invited back again by Churchill to come and be the host for tonight's info session. For those who don't know a lot about me, in a past life, I used to work on a First Nations Aboriginal football show called the Mangrook Football Show, but I've shifted away from that, worked in education for a little bit, and now I'm working in the arts at Agency Projects, which is a First Nations non-for-profit that helps elevate and celebrate First Nations artists and their communities locally, nationally and internationally. And when I'm not doing that work, I also work for 3KND Cool and Deadly, which is the First Nations radio station here in Naarm as well. So I still get to yarn to people and tell stories and help them share stories in different ways as well. But of course, tonight you're here to learn a little bit more about the Churchill Fellowship and how to apply and all those sort of things. So I think first and foremost, we're going to have Christine Dacey, who is the CEO, to have a little chat to us. And Christine, funnily enough, it's been a whole year since we've seen each other last. And from memory, you just come on board as CEO last year as well.
Your memory's pretty good, Leila. Yes, it's been a year. So I've seen the whole cycle through end to end, and I've seen firsthand like what an amazing opportunity is, and I'm sure Lorena's going to tell us all about that from her perspective. But I'm really thrilled to be here. Just give people, and the whole point of this session, right, is no dumb questions, ask away. Our only KPI for success is that we give you the information you need so that you can make a good decision about whether you want to apply, about what's the best way to go about applying, and about how you can do your very best foot forward so that you're giving yourself the best opportunity if you decide that this is your year. So I'm happy to kick off into the slides, Leila, unless you want to add anything else before we get going.
Just very, very quickly, I just wanted to acknowledge the fact that when people were coming into the session tonight, that they were actually hearing the story of Jasmine Jan, which is really beautiful. She was also a fellow, and her fellowship was all about art and conservation. It was a very interesting little video that you guys got to see, and a little package story. And of course, we've got Lorena, who will be talking to hers soon as well.
Okay. So I'll get going. I've only got 4 slides. I'll talk a little bit about them. I'm really conscious that I'm going to kind of pour forth a lot of information. Do not worry about it. We have really great questions and answers on our website. We also have some really great animations where we've broken down all the stages of the fellowship so that you can go and have a look at that. So if you go onto our churchilltrust.com.au website, there's a tab called Become a Fellow. All of this stuff that we're about to talk about is there. And if you don't get to ask your question tonight, have a look there and see if there might be a bit of information for you. If there's not, by all means, just follow up with us. So listen, take in as much as you can, but just remember, this is not your only opportunity. We are going to be posting this on our YouTube channel, and there are great resources out there. So first of all, a little bit about the Trust, if you don't know. So we've been around for 60 years, and we're named after Sir Winston Churchill. And the funds for our fellowships come from everyday Australians who donated 6 decades ago who basically believed in the power of change, which is, of course, one of the things that Sir Winston was really famous for. And he didn't want any statues. He wanted a living legacy, and he wanted to invest in individuals who could make changes in their communities. So we're really proud of our history. We've been really careful managing that money so that we can continue to offer these life-changing opportunities for people. And we've got about 4,900 fellows. We pick about 100 people a year. Really pleasingly for us, in the 2025 round, Leila did such a great job on the information session that 15 of our 100 were Torres Strait Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people. So you totally punched above your weight. And beyond those 15, we actually have other people doing projects that focus on Indigenous issues. So we're really leaning into it. Our fellowships are basically a life-changing opportunity to go overseas for a minimum of 4 weeks or a maximum of 8 weeks and study something that you are really passionate about. And what you learn overseas, you bring back and you turn into actions or ideas or concepts that benefit your local community. That's really as simple as it is. The keys are you go away, you learn something new, you observe some new practices, you talk to some people, and then you come back and you make change at home. So these are life-changing opportunities. We really focus on the fact that anyone can apply for a fellowship. We are not a Rhodes Scholarship. We are not a PhD. We do not have any academic qualifications that are required. It is all about you and what you care about. Just let me unpack that a bit more for you. It's one thing to be passionate. It's one thing to be interested. But what we're looking for is a great topic, your passion and enthusiasm, and your ability to do something with that passion and enthusiasm, right? Because I'm really passionate about all sorts of things, but can I do something with it? So it's kind of, that's the secret sauce, is great topic, great person, great project, right time. The traveling overseas piece, like that's just been in the DNA of the fellowship since we started. It's really important to us. We do know that for some people living in very remote parts of Australia, that might be quite daunting. And so we do have some provision for travel within Australia, but really that's used quite sparingly in the fellowship program. The vast, vast number of our fellows go overseas, and that really is the core of our program. But if you think you have a special case for travel within Australia, then by all means talk to us as part of this application process. And of course, when you come back, you become a Churchill Fellow, you become part of our alumni network. And, you know, there are some great fellows out there doing some great things. And we try to take a light touch approach to our alumni. We don't want to put pressure on you, but we love you to stay connected. We love hearing about what you're doing. And we're also working away in the background at the moment on other things that we can do to support people when they come back from their travel. So being in the alumni really matters. So life-changing, you don't need academic quals. You will be going overseas, and then you become part of our alumni. So some tips and tricks on applying. And the eligibility is you have to be an Australian or a permanent resident and 18 years of age or over. That's it. That's the single eligibility criteria. There's no upper age limit. And we've had some extremely, I was going to say elderly, but that sounds disrespectful, experienced people do their fellowships. For those of you who might need a little bit of support, if you've got a disability or some other special need, we have some tailored support provisions that we can talk you through. What I tend to do in these sessions is focus on kind of the broadest number of questions that apply to the broadest number of potential applicants. But if you've got something that you want to talk to us about, then by all means, come and talk to us. Your project has to be an individual project, can't be a group project. The one exception to that is specifically designed to support First Nations people. We have joint fellowships, and I think we had a record number last year. I think we had 3 or 4, and that's where an Indigenous person works with either another Indigenous person or a non-Indigenous person. So two people can work on the same project, they do the same travel, they come back, they jointly write their report, and they are both fellows. So that's a really special category that we've carved out. I won't talk much about sponsorships except to say some fellowships are sponsored. For you as an applicant, don't worry about it. It won't rule you in and it won't rule you out. And Lorena will talk to you about kind of what that felt like in her space, but it is on the application form, and some people get really tricked about it and they think, have I got to tick this box? Do I not have to tick this box? Am I doing myself some damage? Don't worry about it. But if you think you see a sponsorship that looks good and aligns with your project, then by all means, tick the box, because it's not going to count against you. I'm going to just move to the next slide because it's got a couple more tips. Why? Why is your project important, and why now? Who are you going to help and how? You know, when we talk about coming back and benefiting your community, you can describe your community as the local football netball club. You could describe your local community as the state of Victoria. You could talk about the whole of Australia. You could talk about, you know, the South Pacific. It's up to you to tell us who you're going to benefit and how you're going to benefit. Itinerary, we get lots and lots of questions about this. And I always say to people, when you're applying, and I'll be interested to hear how Lorena, you know, calibrated this when she did her application. We do not expect you to have every I dotted and T crossed when you put in your application. But we need it to make sense so that if you are interviewed, you can say to the panel, I am going to go to New Zealand, Chile, Argentina, Costa Rica, and Canada, right? Because you've picked these spots because that's where the people that you want to talk to are, that's where the issues are, that's where you've observed some best practice. Don't write that down. And then if you get selected, come back to me later and say, oh, no, now I'm going to go to Laos, Thailand, Cambodia, and Norway, because the panel has seen and heard you talk about this group of countries and these sorts of people. So it's got to be about 70% right. But we will work with you very flexibly, and I'm sure Lorena can talk about that process. We get a lot of questions about itinerary. The other thing about your itinerary is don't overcrowd it, don't kill yourself. It's kind of an intense process. You need some respite, and Lorena's nodding so she can talk to you about that as well. The other tip is you've got to be able to really explain why are you the right person for this. Don't be shy. Don't be modest. This is not the place for imposter syndrome. I happen to believe that everyone's got a story and everyone's got a capability, and I really encourage you not to rule yourself out. Because, you know, some of our most delightful fellows are the ones who go, I just can't believe you picked me. And that what they did is a really good job of saying what they wanted to do and why they thought it was really important to do it. We'll just pop up the opening and closing dates on the final screen. 9 o'clock on the 27th of February we open, and we close at 5 p.m. on the 30th of April. Do not put yourself in the position of writing it on the 30th of April. I know none of you would. However, I hear stories. Shortlisted applicants will be interviewed in June and July. And I will tell you that interviews are done face to face. And those dates, which are up on our website, are completely immovable, because we have panels of volunteers who come together and donate their time. And the reason we insist on doing it in person, so I'm happy to do these information sessions virtually, but the whole ethos of our fellowship is we're investing in sending you overseas to talk human being to human being. That's kind of what we're about, right? You know yourself, you can get so much out of a Zoom call, but no further. We want you to immerse yourself in the culture. We want you to see firsthand. We want you actually also to give back. And so that's really a big part of our fellowship. So that is a non-negotiable. So have a look at the dates. And if they don't work for you, maybe this isn't your year, come back and see us next year. But really, you have to come to the interviews in person. In the big states, Victoria and New South Wales, there'll be a preliminary interview, which you can do by Zoom, but the final interview you have to do in person. And the other thing you have to do in person if you're selected is come to our onboarding in Canberra, which happens in October. So those dates are actually really important. We will make the announcements about successful fellows around September. And then you have got, if you're selected, about 15 months to travel. So from November this year to January 2028. And astonishingly, we picked people in September last year and they left on the 1st of November. Like it was just, they were ready, they were going. So I'm going to stop talking there and hand back to Leila and Lorena. But I've got heaps and heaps of other bits and pieces if you want to ask me any questions.
Thank you so much, Christine. And as Christine said, all the information that I know sometimes coming to these info sessions can feel a little bit like information overload, but all of the stuff is on the website, which is churchilltrust.com.au, as Christine mentioned. But I do like the idea that everybody has a story and has a capability to make change. And that's what the Churchill Fellowship is all about. It's about creating those experiences for yourself. As you said, Christine, to have in-person experiences. We all know that you get the most when you sit down and have those yarns face to face, not just in our context, in mine and Lorena's and the other First Nations mob that are on the session tonight, not just in our context as First Nations people, but just in general, that human to human touch and connection is so important. And if you have any questions, thoughts, ideas, or wonderings that have come up for you while Christine was talking, please feel free to put them in the Q&A box for us to then answer during our Q&A session. But of course, Lorena is going to tell us a little bit about her story. And Lorena is an alumni to the Churchill Fellowship. And Lorena Alum, I think you said that you did your fellowship in 2023, 2024 from memory around that time. And you're a I know you said you don't want me to talk to this stuff, but it's important for us to acknowledge all of the success that you've had. But you're a multi-Walkley award-winning journalist descended from the Yuruloi and Gamilaroi people of northwest New South Wales. And you had over 30 years worth of experience in your career as a journalist, a broadcaster for people like the ABC, working in news on Triple J, Radio National TV and online as well, among other things. But it's so lovely to first and foremost be able to meet you or meet you online. Hopefully we'll be able to meet in person sometime in the near future. And it's lovely to have you on tonight to be able to tell us a little bit about your story as a fellow.
Oh, Leila, that's the best introduction. Thanks. That was lovely. Thank you. Yeah, Yama, and to you and Yama to everybody on the call tonight. I'm coming to you from Yolngu land out here at Barramadigal in Sydney, in the Yolngu clans of the Gadigal Nation. I work on Gadigal land in the city, but I live on Yolngu land. It's a really beautiful part of the city, not far from where the final resting place of our first special envoy, Benelong, it's not far from here. So as Leila said, I'm a journalist and I've been in the media for a long time. That's just a very polite way of saying I'm quite old. But at the moment, yes. So at the moment I work with Jumbunna Indigenous Institute for Research and Education at UTS in Sydney as an industry professor, and that role has come almost directly from the Churchill Fellowship that I did in 2023, 2024. So I can talk a bit about that as I go. But I should start with, I've been a journalist for a long time, and when Christine talks about the imposter syndrome, that was pretty high on my list, and it almost stopped me from applying because I'd seen other very high caliber people apply successfully for Churchill Fellowships, and I just didn't put myself in that category. But as I say, having done one, it has changed my life in the most amazing ways, unexpected ways. So I'm very glad that I overcame that imposter syndrome and applied. So Leila, did you want me to just have a quick yarn about how I applied for
Yeah, maybe just
Yep.
your whole process, the
Sure.
reason around why you wanted to apply, and then the
Mm.
application process for you moving into then doing your fellowship and what that looked like.
Mm. So I applied in 2023. It was the year of the referendum, as we all know. Very challenging year professionally and personally for so many of us. I was writing and reporting on the referendum, the politics around that. And to be perfectly frank, this was a lovely distraction from the news. I thought, I'm going to think about a big idea that I'm passionate about, that I care about, and it will help me as a distraction from the really challenging news that I was reporting on and commenting on and experiencing, like the rest of us going through that year. So I came up with an idea that was connected to work, that was connected to really the whole point of my professional life was truth-telling, and how the media has a role to play in truth-telling. And I thought, this is a bit of a long shot, but it's something that I am passionate about. And I feel like the timing was good because we were in this referendum campaign. There was a lot of uncertainty about how it would go. And I had personal belief that truth-telling is one of the great undone, unfinished business of the nation. And I wanted to look at how other countries have dealt with this dilemma, and maybe go and visit some places where truth-telling had been done and in different ways, and where truth-telling was being done at the time that I was applying, so I could see it happening in real time for First Nations people in other countries. And so I got this idea together. I started doing my research, and I really began as a way of taking my mind off a challenging work, trying to think of something positive and meaningful and impactful that could be of long-term benefit to me, my profession, and to the national discourse about truth-telling. And so I made that application, and as Christine says, don't leave it to the last minute if you want, because the application is a really helpful, if you are successful, it's what you will keep going back to as your kind of the cornerstone of the itinerary that you build, the people that you talk to. See it as an opportunity to do some research on that idea that you are passionate about. And I would say it's something that you it should be something that you do feel that strong connection to professionally and personally, because you're going to be immersed in travel. You're going to be immersed in learning new ways of thinking, new ways of looking at your special subject. So it has to be something that you really care about. And I think in the interview process, that comes through. It is what the panel is looking for, and I think it will sustain you when the nerves get the better of you. So when I was being interviewed, for example, I was thinking this is quite intimidating, because as a journalist, I'm usually the one asking the questions, and having to answer them is and look at people you've never met before and think, am I communicating well? Is this coming across well? Getting past all that, because of the strength of your belief in the idea and the strength of your belief in your capacity to carry it out. And so I think I was really lucky that they chose my idea, an abstract one, how the media in Australia can play a role in the truth-telling process that we need to have. So it was an ambitious idea, but also something that I thought I could have an impact with, educating my colleagues in newsrooms, talking with journalist associations and even the Walkley Foundation and the Melbourne Press Club, the two big institutions, about how they can be more active in this space, educating journalists. And I started then to think about impacts on journalism education. Why it was that I was seeing young journalists coming through newsrooms, I've seen a few generations of them now, who still had very limited understanding of First Nations history, First Nations people. I wasn't seeing the progress that I thought we absolutely deserved. So I was asking questions about journalism education and how we could build truth-telling and an understanding of our colonial history into those things. And then I started looking at where in the world is this stuff being done. And that was when I started to get, the ideas started to spark about who I might talk to and where I might travel to. And it was actually a really fun process in the sense that it was research, and that even if I wasn't going to be successful as an applicant, it was something that I was interested in doing. I found myself interested in reading more about concepts of truth telling and restorative justice, and that sort of went on from there.
So where were some of the places that you ended up going, Lorena, and what was that experience like, and how long, because as Christine mentioned, you can go for as little as 4 weeks up to 8 weeks. So how long was your journey, and where did you go?
So it's about 7 weeks. So it's a big commitment if you've got family and a job. So, you have to get all your ducks in a row before you go around that stuff. It can take a bit of wrangling. So again, you have to think about if this is your year, because you really have to commit to this. So it was 7 weeks in the end, but that was to accommodate the schedules of people I was visiting in the countries that I went to. When you think of truth-telling processes, you think, Rwanda, South Africa, Bosnia, those places. And I didn't necessarily want to go to places where there'd been a lot of work done around truth-telling. I wanted to go and visit countries where there was unfinished business, or where they were still grappling with these ideas, or where it was quite new. And also places where the media had been involved in that. So I started off, the first step was to go to The Guardian, where I was working in the UK, because they had just done this huge project, 3-year project, about their origins in the transatlantic slave trade. So the Guardian UK began as the Manchester Guardian, and Taylor, who started The Guardian, was given a loan from a group of friends to set up this, prestigious newspaper. 11 of the 15 of them have links to the transatlantic slave trade through cotton in Manchester. So when The Guardian did this work, it's still the first time that a media outlet in anywhere in the world has done this kind of work. It was 3 years worth of, rigorous historical research, and then this big project, forward-facing reporting project that they did. And I found that so fascinating, because it was the first one I could really study this template, because I do think there are media outlets in Australia who have to do this work too. And I also could learn from my colleagues at The Guardian how they went about it, how they managed it internally, how they managed it with other journalists and within the broader media culture, because it was a really strong act of truth-telling. So I started in London, and then I travelled to Ireland, to Northern Ireland, which I thought was going to be a bit of a long shot, but it turned out to be the absolutely right place to go. Because in Northern Ireland, people are grappling with a violent colonial history, unresolved trauma, political and social division, and mopping up the chaos and the destruction of all those years of occupation, and trying to get the British government to be held accountable for, their role in the troubles in Northern Ireland. And the thing that I learnt most about that was in Ireland, was that we know the stories of the perpetrators, we know the stories of the main players, the government agents, the state agents, the armies, the paramilitaries, and so on, but we don't ever really hear enough about the individuals, the people living day to day in these places, and how they experience the troubles. And how they want their truth to be told. So it was a really fascinating journey, because I was meeting people who had been maimed and injured, meeting people who were survivors, of a really violent time, and their descendants. And so I was learning about how people are processing this as individuals, and how they can lead to education in the public sphere about their particular issues. So another completely opposite, completely different experience of truth-telling. And then I went to Sweden and Norway, where the Sami people, where the governments had set up truth commissions, and they're still underway, to speak with Sami people and to speak with the truth commissions themselves about what they were doing, what their role was, what they thought they could get out of that form of truth telling. So it was, in a way, was 3 different kinds of truth telling processes. One, a media project, one, a state, state versus individuals project, and another, the state directing a big truth commission. So once I started doing the research into the idea, that led me to the places where I should go. And I have to say, I was a bit nervous, thinking, what if I go all this way and they're not there? Or but they were, because what you'll find is that the people you meet are as passionate about this as you are. So it's a wonderful experience from that perspective, and they do want to talk to you about these issues, and they make all sorts of connections for you that you probably wouldn't have thought otherwise. So I did a 7-week tour I was in London for 2 weeks with the Cotton Capital team and speaking to historians in the north of England who were doing the research. They managed to identify the actual people who were enslaved by name and trace their descendants to the Galiwinku Islands off the Carolina coast in the US. So the Guardian's now working with those descendants on a restorative justice project. It's not reporting, it's about what those people, as the descendants of the slaves, the enslaved people, want as by way of reparations. So I started there, and then 7 weeks later came back to Australia with just, a wealth of ideas, and people were so generous, and I'm still, as I say now, the things that I learned on that trip are informing my work practice right now, and probably for the rest of my career.
Lorena, can I jump in? Leila, sorry, I just wanted to, how long did it take you from, when you started doing that bit of research to forming up your thing, putting your application in, and how did you go about picking some referees who could help you kind of make your case? Because it's a really competitive process. About 1,000 people apply each year. So in terms of putting your best foot forward, referees really matter.
Right. So obviously I chose referees that I have a great respect for, who know me, who could vouch for my work, but could vouch for my capacity to carry this out. So you have to have someone in your corner who believes in you and who knows that you can do this job, that you have, that you've taken the step, the risk, the opportunity to apply for. So I obviously my first one was my boss at the time, Lenore Taylor, who I have a huge respect for, and who's was going to be impacted by me being away for 7 weeks. And once I spoke, I walked her through the idea, and she could see the clear benefits in it as well. So she was one, and another one was someone who I now work with, who I have enormous respect for, Professor Larissa Berendt at the Jumbunna Institute at UTS, who understood implicitly what I was trying to do. So I didn't have to kind of convince them that this was a good idea. And they both had a lot more faith in me than I had in myself. So referees are really important, and it's really worth sitting down with that person who you respect, who you think is going to support your case, and really walking them through what you want to do. And so they understand not just your great idea, but also they know you well enough to know that you'll be able to pull it off.
So that's something to keep in mind in relation to your applications, is really great referees, people that really know who you are, understand your capacity and your capability to be able to do the work you do, and understand how passionate you are about your particular project or your subject. Yeah.
Leila, I was going to interrupt and say, can I just tell people that when you get your referees, so the process is you identify who you want to be your referee, you send them a link, they'll get a form to populate. You might choose 2 or 3 different people. We suggest one personal, one professional, but you might send it out to a couple of different people. When they submit that, the referee report comes back to you, and then you upload it with your application. So you get to choose the best 2. Why wouldn't you? And you have to do that 2 days before the closing. I always say to people, don't hate us. We're actually doing it to try and help you, because people are massively distracted on the last day, you know, counting words and characters and making sure everything's right. We don't want you worrying about your referees as well. So your referees actually have to be in 2 days before the close of the application. So give them plenty of time and give yourself plenty of time. And when you upload your application and upload your referees, hit submit. We had so many people calling us at about 10 to 5 last year going, my application's not submitted and I've put it all in. And we're like, you've uploaded your application form, you've uploaded your referees, you have to hit the submit button. So I'm giving you the red hot tip here. The other red hot tip that I'm reliably informed is that the character limit in the application form is really strict, and people mistake words for characters. Every semicolon, every space, every full stop, every apostrophe counts. So do it in Word and then dump it into the application. We've got a sample application up on the website. It's not long. We don't want it to be long. We're not going to read a thesis. You know, we've got 1,000 people applying to us. So, but as Lorena was saying, it's about having the really sharpest pitch that you can do for us. And then I see, Lorraine, you've now got a question about the video pitch. Did you have to do one in your year? Trust me, you'd remember if you had to. We've introduced this.
No, then.
No, you're lucky. You must have just snuck through. We've introduced this 60-second video pitch because we get so many, right? It's actually really helpful to put a name, you know, a face to a name, and we ask you to just do a 60-second clip. It's actually 58 seconds, so that's another, you know, and just you think about it. You know, you're in a lift with someone. You've got like a couple of seconds to say, this is what I'm on about. This is who I am. I'm a Churchill Fellow. So we ask people to really, and like people really, you know, it's a real double-edged sword, right? It's really hard to stick to 60 seconds. It's really hard to stick to the character limit in the application. But both of those things will help prepare you if you get an interview for telling your story in a really good, well thought out, precise and concise way.
I reckon Leila's got some tips on TV, how to get.
Yeah, Leila.
No, it's really good to be succinct around what it is that you want to do. And that elevator pitch is the perfect way to think about it. If you're just going up a couple of levels, what are you going to say to someone? What are you going to say to someone in those 58 seconds about yourself and what it is that you're passionate about? Is really, really important. And I do like the idea that there's lots of different ways. And I know this was also mentioned last year, Christine, in the information session as well, that there's lots of different ways to record your findings and do your report. It's not just a written report. There's lots of different ways that you can do that as well.
Yeah. That's really, you've got a fantastic memory, Leila. That's crazy. So one of the things that, in fact, the only thing that we ask you to do when you come back is write up what you did, who you saw, what did they tell you, what are some of the things and you observed. And I say write up, but actually what Leila said is spot on. Not everyone's a writer. Not everyone loves to write. We have some fantastic examples of podcasts, vlogs, blogs, slide decks, pieces of art. So please don't let the idea of doing a report be the thing that stops you applying. Like, your story is yours, and we want it to be really accessible and digestible by the people that you are trying to communicate with. And so if you say to me, I really think that this is going to be the most impactful way I can tell my story, then go for it. You know, we're really open to that.
And there's also a question here, Lorena, to you saying, what research project did you use or put in place to identify individuals? And then also, what sort of research did you do just around the places that you wanted to go to?
So once I decided where I wasn't going to go, I then started looking at countries where this stuff had been happening, where truth-telling, the different kinds of truth-telling had been grappled with. And then I just started reading. It's the same research process that I would use for journalism, like for an article or a radio program. So you just read deeply in the area, and even just a basic Google search will lead you from one idea to the next article to, oh, this person's really interesting. They said this, that really resonates with me. I'm going to find out where they are and send them an email. And so, and I was amazed at how quickly people wrote back to me, like, yeah, this is great. I'd love to talk to you about restorative justice. It's my favourite subject. Like I just found there was a lot of enthusiasm. So my research process was read deeply, read widely, think outside the square. If you can't get somebody, as if they're an academic at a university, they might volunteer somewhere else. You might have heard them on a podcast. Just cast your net wide and ask around, talk about it. You'll be amazed at what comes back to you. There's a lot of serendipity when you do research. Things start to connect up that you hadn't thought of before, and you start to see a picture that you hadn't expected. So insofar as I have a process, Emily, it's that you just read and think and read some more, and just keep digging. Footnotes in articles are always great. That's where you find interesting people, and they might lead you on to other things. So read as widely as you can.
And Margaret here says that she's loved hearing your story, and she's actually thinking about Ireland as a part of her potential project. So, yeah, what was Ireland like just generally for you, just to give an idea to Margaret?
I loved Ireland. I loved the people. I loved the place. I would go back there in a heartbeat. I had a fantastic time. It's a beautiful country. The people are warm, and I loved it. I don't want to get all romantic about the Irish and whatever, because they'd tease the life out of me for saying this. But I did have a fantastic time there. People were very down to earth and warm. We have a mutual contempt for the colonisers. That was a sort of unifying theme around the place. There was a bit of, interestingly, I should be frank about this, when I said I was applying for a Winston Churchill Fellowship, there were some questions about Winston, and his reputation isn't, 100% squeaky clean. And there are, there are complex ideas, complex opinions. He was a complex man. So you need to read up about him as well. I really strongly recommend that you learn a bit about Mr. Churchill, and learn a bit about the trust, because I think it will help you come to terms with that. You will get it from people. I mean, the Legacies of Enslavement project was like, Winston Churchill's paying for your trip. No, the trust. And so you're a representative of that trust. So it's a good idea to learn about the work that they do, and how significant it is for Australians, and has been for the last 60 years. And it's also worth learning about Winston Churchill himself, because, as I say, he's a fascinating character. As someone who was researching truth-telling, I did have to acknowledge that the complexity of his legacy. But I think it really is an example of why truth-telling matters, and why we all need to understand that people are humans, and we are complex, and nobody's legacy is 100% clean, and we have to live in the grey areas. We have to understand that there's no such thing as right and wrong all the time. People make decisions under pressure. They have complex lives, and it's not for us to judge. That said, we also need to be able to tell the full history, and an accounting of history requires us to tell all the stories and put back the things that past histories might have left out. So I've wandered off the topic.
I completely agree, Lorena. Like we're completely open to that, and we acknowledge past harms and are really committed to trying to do better.
And I think the sheer numbers of applicants, First Nations applicants, is a good example of that. It's a really good sign. And I think that don't let that complexity put you off, because, as I say, I mean, I've been around a long time, but the Churchill Fellowship really did change my life. It did change my thinking, and I don't say that lightly. I was in a professional position. I had the opportunity, and that's what this will give you, is the chance to step out of that day-to-day and think really deeply and in a big blue sky, big picture way about what it is you do or what it is you're passionate about, and how you can turn that thinking into something constructive that will benefit you, your community, your and that could be your state or your nation or your local community. The benefit isn't measured by that. You can come back and make change, and that's what I think is so important about these the fellowship.
You know, 100%. That makes a lot of sense there. And I know, Christine, you mentioned this earlier in the discussion, but there are a few people talking about the idea of co-applications or co-applicants. I see a few people talking about working alongside First Nations people themselves as allies. That's also an option.
So let me just step you through what our program allows for. So we can't match you up with people. Joint fellows come to us. They've made that connection and they've agreed their topic and they've applied jointly. So that's kind of the first thing. We only have joint fellowships for First Nations projects, and one person in that joint fellowship has to be Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander. Both can be, but one definitely has to be. In terms of the topics, the joint fellowships do have to be focused on Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander topics. That said, we do have non-Indigenous people doing topics that also focus on issues that have a very strong nations connection. What we ask and what we require of people is that they have the consent and agreement of the impacted people, that they actually want the work done and they think that these are the right people to be doing the work. So that notion of informed consent is really strong with us. And, you know, there's plenty of people who do have it. The other thing I would say to you, and I've seen a couple of the questions here saying, I'm struggling to know whether I should apply under this First Nations stream or another stream. Don't worry about the streams. Just do not worry about them. So many of our topics cross different, they cross over, right? Like they might be about loneliness, they might be about domestic violence, they might be about art, they might be about, you know what I mean? Do not get distracted by the stream. So you can nominate in your application. You have to nominate in your application which stream you're applying, and we'll do all that sorting in the background for you. So don't let that noise kind of get in your head.
So does that answer your question, Karen? Yeah, that was Karen's question.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So, and I would say, as someone, my fellowship. Sorry to talk over you, Chris. My fellowship was the Barbara Dunstan Fellowship. So it was it was sponsored by the legacy of Barbara Dunstan, but Barbara's family sponsored that one. And what it meant was I got to meet a really fabulous bunch of people who said, we love your idea. We hope that Barbara, their mum, had passed. And so they were like, we think your mum would have loved this too. So I got to learn about Barbara. I took a photo of her with me in my suitcase. Barbara and I had lots of chats on the way. Chris told me a little bit about his mum, and I liked her enormously. So she was my companion. And Chris and the family were enormously supportive, and we still keep in touch. So you can apply you just apply with your idea and let the trust make those decisions. But if you are awarded a sponsored fellowship, there is no interference at all. And in fact, you just get more support. You just get an extra bunch of supportive people. And I was really grateful for that.
Lorena, did you see the question about how big was your interview panel?
Oh, I haven't seen that one. That was
Yeah,
big.
there was a question about how big the interview panel was for you, and also how that panel is actually made up, because you mentioned before, Christine, that there were volunteers that make up that panel, but also, so there was like a two-part, so it was how many, and then how that panel is created, if you will.
Well, I'll leave Christine to answer about the how. But for me, the panels actually, because it's quite a rigorous process. Don't let that put you off though, because it means if you get asked back, it means that they are taking your application seriously. So I found the panels got a little bit bigger each time, but everyone was really warm and friendly. They were like, by the end I was thinking, well, obviously, I might be successful with this, but there was a big room of people, but they were very warm and open. And again, it was an opportunity to convince other people that this was a good idea and that truth telling mattered. And they asked me some good questions, and not always, Dorothy Dix, as they asked tricky questions. They really put you through your paces. It felt a little bit intimidating. As I say, I'm used to asking the questions, and having that relationship was kind of weird. But it was a very warm and welcoming room. There was a smallish panel to begin with, and then it got bigger because, the trust is serious about its decisions, but also they know that this work that if you're successful, it really can change your professional and personal life. So they're very careful. So they want to do things properly. So Christine might want to talk about the how those decisions are made.
Christine?
So, yeah, happy to, because if you get through to final interview, I'll be sitting on most of the interview panels. So you'll have one friendly face already. I'm super friendly. So all of our assessors, they donate their time, and which is really incredible. We've got a couple of hundred people across Australia, and we really do try and make them really cross-disciplinary, so that you can be talking to someone who knows about education, you can be talking to someone who knows about medicine, you can be talking to someone who's an artist. I think your description's really right. They try and put people at ease. How easy that is when there's 10 of you around a table and one of you down the other end going, holy moly, what have I put myself up for here? But we try really hard to do that. And we want you to do well. The other thing I would say to you is be yourself, right? Don't think you're coming in and you have to look a certain way. One of my favorite interviews last year was actually two young Indigenous guys up in the Territory who rocked in bucket hats and, Birkenstocks. And it was just the greatest conversation. And they got up and, we just loved how real they were, talking about skateboarding as a youth diversion program. It was just fantastic. And that just gives you a sense of, one of the things we kind of really pride ourselves on is the sheer breadth of topics that we're a little bit unusual like that. We're not your standard PhDs. You could be talking to us about weaving, beekeeping, neurosurgery, just anything, saving turtles. So kind of, don't rule yourself out if you think my project's a little niche. That we don't want you to do that, because we really love it. A couple of other things that I really should have mentioned before, and a few questions are popping up around them. The fellowship, the average cost of the fellowship last year was $37,900, right? So that's average. So it depends on where you're going and how long you're going for, but it covers your airfares, your accommodation, your travel incidentals, and our fellows say to us that that's a really good amount of money. We don't try and nickel and dime you, but we are a charity and we do manage the money really carefully. Some people just put in applications with lots and lots of conferences in them, and I got to tell you, they're not very compelling applications. You're competing against a lot of people who, like Lorena, had done lots of thinking about where they could go and who they could talk to and what was the point of being immersed like that. And then someone says, oh, I want to go to this conference. And you're like, okay, I know which one I'm sort of more drawn to. The other question we get a lot is, can I travel with family? And the answer is, horses for courses, right? Some people are like, no, this is my one and only chance to be selfish. You can all stay home and do the laundry while I'm away. This is going to be my time. And other people go, no, I couldn't do it without the help of a friend, partner, logistics, event manager. So it's up to you. But if you take someone with you, that's at your cost. And not everyone can afford to take someone with them. So really have a think about that in terms of what's right for you. So those are just some really common questions that we get. And I saw a couple of them have popped up here.
Well, I think that's really good to consider. And Lorena, would that have been something that you would have considered as a part of your fellowship?
I would have liked to have taken my kids with me, but it was financially not possible. And also, I think in a way it's hard to meet the competing demands of family wanting to, go and do sightseeing, and you've got work to do. And so think about that as well. If you've got a partner who wants to come with you, or someone that you collaborate with who wants to come, that's great, and you can do that. It's great. I would just say one other thing that I found so important, and I'm so glad I did it, was I wrote a daily diary. I'm not really a journaler by nature, but it was just so helpful. And when it came time to write the report at the other end, I had this day-by-day account. And I had that was my way, because my memory's not as great as it used to be. So writing things down was a really helpful process. And I bookended my day with that. So, if you start now writing, when you're writing your application, think of it as like the early draft of your report. You've got your video pitch and your elevator pitch, which is you might find challenging, but it's also helping you really nail down what that idea is. If you can get it down to 60 seconds, that's a good way of knowing how confident you are that you're on the right track. And just imagine that you're saying to a mate, or you're talking to your mum or a friend, or I'm going to go and do this thing about blah. And how would you talk to them about it? What would you say is the most enticing or important thing about this, and why it's going to blow everyone's socks off? So that would be my final tips.
That's wonderful advice. And I love the idea of journaling and also just soundboarding off people that care about you and love you and are willing to give you that truthful, honest, feedback about your thoughts and ideas around what it is that you're passionate around as well. And just a reminder to everybody that applications open 9 a.m. February 27 and close 5 p.m. April 30th. But as Christine said, you have to get your referees in 2 days before the ending. So that's the 28th of April for those of you playing at home. And again, if it's your year, again, it's really important. Lorena's talked about it and Christine talked about it, but be really conscious and think about whether this is your year or not. The fellowship will always be here. But if it is your year, please feel free to apply. And it doesn't matter how niche your subject is, as Christine said, I guarantee you there's other people around the world that are just as passionate about it as you are. I'm conscious of time. Is there any last things that you wanted to say, Christine?
No, if we haven't got to your questions tonight, and I can see the team are just doing one or two last ones here, don't worry. We're not going anywhere. We'll be here through the whole application process. You can email into us. There is tons and tons of information on the website though. So maybe go and have a look there in the first instance. And then if you've still got questions, and really, we just want people to put their best foot forward, back themselves in, have a go, and really the world is your oyster.
That's it. And churchilltrust.com.au is where you can find out all the frequently asked questions and apply and all of those sort of things. Good luck to everybody. I can't wait to see many, many more First Nations fellows on the website in the next year to come, Christine. Christine, thank you again for allowing me to host tonight. Lorena, it was wonderful to sit and listen to your story about your fellowship, your report and your journey as a part of a fellow as well. My name is Leila Gurruwiwi. I've been your host tonight. I hope you enjoy the rest of your night and happy applying.
Bye, everyone.